Greater Greensboro is focused on ending poverty. Did you know that over 57,000 people are living in poverty in the Greater Greensboro community? That's more than a surrounding town populations of Colfax, Oak Ridge, Summerfield, Brown Summit, McLeansville, and Pleasant Garden combined. 1 out of every 4 children in Greensboro is growing up in poverty. The ongoing impacts of the pandemic and rising costs of just about everything have hit all of us in this room. And I'm here to tell you that they have impacted people living in poverty even more. It is our responsibility to do what we can to provide resources and support that makes it as easy as possible for someone to leave poverty. Check out this quick story, and I think you'll see what we need.
I lost my parents at a young age. Going into adulthood was rough. I didn't have all the information that I needed. Me wanting a better future for my daughters, I decided to make sure that I had a job, and I didn't know what direction to go in. I was looking up stuff online, and I came across the Family Success Center.
The United Way's Family Success Centers, to me, is a holistic approach to providing services to families. And so when individuals are engaging at that level and you're providing those critical resources that are needed to mitigate child care and transportation assistance, and you're assisting them with, utilities in some cases and connecting them to other resources, that's taking a holistic approach in ways that public systems just weren't built to take, but in a very meaningful way.
Thanks to the Family Success, I am working in the medical field.
It's been an honor, to collaborate with the United Way's Family Success Centers in serving Tamisha and her daughters. Collectively, we've been able to provide employment and training resources to her that now enable her to create a better opportunity in life for her daughters.
Later on, I want to do RN and eventually get my house, let my kids have the house that they always wanted, or they always talk about, I should say.
So I believe that the community should support and rally around efforts of the United Way of Greater Greensboro, because the agency, one, has a demonstrated track record of really moving a needle on some critical issues in our community. They have a very dedicated and talented staff that is committed to understanding community need, community plight, and developing solutions. I believe that the United Way does a tremendous job at aligning, pulling in partners that are designed to eradicate poverty and to support families in ways that are going to move them out of generational poverty.
My oldest tend to surprise me all the time. And one day she told me how she looks up to me and how she's proud of me. And it hits hard because I know I never had the mother to look up to, and to know that I'm doing an awesome job and my daughter feel like she wants to follow me. So to hear that was the best thing ever.
My name is Chris.
My name is Tamisha.
It's time to put our collective efforts into building a community that benefits all of us.
Local children,
families, and adults need your support.
You can make a difference.
Visit unitedwaygso.org
to learn more,
take action, and make a donation today.
As you just saw, the United Way of Greater Greensboro isn't just raising money to pass it out. They are investing into a strategy that works. Tamisha's story is one of many and many possible thanks to your generosity and United Way strategy. United Way of Greater Greensboro creates, connects, and leads community partnerships that equip and empower people to leave poverty. With your support, United Way helps youth transition from cradle to career, adults land jobs and increase incomes, provide access to basic needs in healthcare, and bundle services and removes barriers so that help is easily accessible. When we collaborate, great things happen. Keynote speaker Angela Williams is going to inspire and challenge us to continue working together to make all of our communities great places for all people. Today, Angela will be joining us virtually. After her presentation, we'll have a panel Q&A discussion that will include some very special guests. I now have the honor of introducing today's speaker. Angela Williams has more than 30 years of leadership experience in the nonprofit and corporate sectors. Prior to serving as president and CEO of United Way Worldwide, she served as president and CEO of Easterfield, the nation's leading nonprofit provider of disability services. Before that, she was executive vice president, general counsel, and chief administrative officer at YMCA of the USA. After graduating from the University of Texas School of Law, she served on active duty as U.S. Air Force Judge Advocate General Corps, commonly known as JAGS Corps, for over 6 years. She notes this experience, when few Black women served in the JAG Corps, was foundational to her commitment to service. Angela served on Senator Edward M. Kennedy's Senate Judiciary Committee staff as special counsel on criminal law, a prosecutor for the DOJ Civil Rights Division, National Church Arson Task Force, and assistant U.S. attorney. In the corporate role, Angela was vice president and deputy general counsel for Sears Holding Corporation, as well as chief compliance and ethics officer after working at Brian K. Law Firm. In 2006, directly before joining the YMCA, Williams was interfaith liaison for the Bush-Clinton Katrina Fund, a nonprofit organization formed to provide critical needed donations to assist the survivors of Hurricane Katrina. A native of Anderson, South Carolina, Williams earned a bachelor's degree in American government from the University of Virginia, a Juris Doctor from the University of Texas School of Law, and a Master of Divinity cum laude from Samuel DeWitt Proctor School of Theology, Virginia Union University. Williams resides in Chicago with her husband, Reverend Roderick Williams. He is a volunteer pastor at the Chicago Apostolic Center following her graduation from the University of Texas School of Law. She was named to the Forbes 2021 list of women 50 over 50 creative social change at scale. And she was presented the 2021 CEO Total Healthcare Award. I think we can all agree that United Way Worldwide is in good hands. And I cannot wait to hear her vision for the future. Please join me in welcoming Angela Williams.
Thank you, Rashonda, for that introduction. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be with all of you today. And please let me know if for some reason you don't hear me and we can make adjustments. But what I want to do is just say thank you to the United Way of Greater Greensboro and its African American Leadership Affinity Group for inviting me to join you in this ongoing celebration of the centennial anniversary of United Way of Greater Greensboro. What an incredible accomplishment to be serving your community for 100 years. So congratulations on that. So the work that's being done by the United Way and AAL right here in Greensboro is making a difference in the lives of our friends and neighbors. And your focus on ending local poverty can drive profound change, not only in Greensboro, but wherever the financial mobility takes those lifted up by your work. And I really appreciated watching the video clip that was just shared with all of us. The passion that you all have for the mission here in Greensboro and the impact of your programs connects to the challenges and opportunities in other communities around the globe. That is the power of our United Way Worldwide network. I was asked to speak to you today about the future of United Way, and I believe that the future is focused on communities. The 95% of communities in the United States served by local United Ways, just like the one in Greensboro, and the communities in the other 37 countries that we are in. Your work here is a critical link to the chain that connects all of us. And I'm actually very, very proud to be a part of the work that you all are doing, and just really a small part, but it's wonderful to be here. And I know without a shadow of a doubt that each of you are a part of today's celebration because you have answered a personal call to service. None of us would be linked with United Way. None of us would be operating in community, but for having this passion for service and this love of humanity and this care and concern for our neighbors. And so the fact that you are here is evident of that heart that you have. And we also see that always elevated during the Christmas season, where the need that is going on in communities seems to come to light even more. And this is, as we call it, the season of giving. And so thank you for being those that have been very generous of your time, talent, and treasure. So in preparing for today's remarks, I was called back to Martin Luther King Jr.'s words from his final book, and a favorite passage of mine that I refer to frequently whenever I do these kinds of public speaking events, because I think it is so relevant to where we find ourselves today. But his book is called Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community? And just that title alone really just to me is so relevant and insightful into how we find ourselves existing in 2022. And the quote out of the book is this: a widely separated family inherits a house in which they have to live together. This is the great new problem of mankind. We have inherited a very large house, a great world house, in which we have to live together, Black and white, Easterner and Westerner, Gentile and Jew, Catholic and Protestant, Muslim and Hindu. A family unduly separated in ideas, culture, and interest, who, because we can never again live apart, must learn somehow to live with each other in peace. What a powerful quote. And as Dr. King reflected, this is a problem for mankind, but I remain hopeful that there is still an opportunity for us to coexist peacefully, even in these tumultuous times. It's my hope, my vision for us at United Way, that we will come together to address the issues that impact each of our communities, just as you all are doing in Greensboro and the surrounding communities. As Rashonda shared with you in her generous introduction, commitment to service to others is foundational to my personal history, stemming from my childhood, with my parents who were leaders in the civil rights movement, with my dad being the head of the NAACP for the state of South Carolina in the 1960s, all the way to my service on active duty in the U.S. Air Force and what I consider to be my service to my country. My own ethic of service to community continued with my tenure at the YMCA, with Easter Seals, which is a National Disability Services organization. And so simply put, my mission is to be an advocate who speaks for the disadvantaged, people with less access to healthcare, education, and economic opportunity. And I'm going to take a point of personal privilege, because you heard in the background that I'm also a lawyer and also an ordained minister. And so one of the things that my husband always says when I talk about being an advocate, he says, you know, you can't win an argument with Angela because she's either going to beat you over the head with the Bible or she's going to beat you with the law. So that's my personal passion, all aspects of who I am coming together at this very wonderful moment in time to be a part of this great network called United Way Worldwide. So when this United Way opportunity presented itself, I knew I wanted to be a part of this organization. It was the invitation to be a leader who gives back through strategic partnerships, and to be the leader who operates under the fierce urgency of now. And when you think about the times that we're currently living in, and just, we don't have to go back far. We can start back in March 2020, when the pandemic really became relevant and in our face, to April, May of this year, when inflation really began to kick up. And I will say that with our United Way 2-in-1 call centers, we were receiving a 40% uptick in people dialing 211 and saying they needed help to pay for rent, to pay their utility bills, and to buy food. That hasn't changed even now. And so there is this real need for us to continue to galvanize, to come together, to create solutions in communities. And that's why partnerships with our neighbors, people in the communities that are affected, as well as government, the business world, civic society is important. Excuse me. So we have to come together and walk shoulder to shoulder to make these differences. To actually make these problems and these inequities to become things of the past and not something we have to deal with currently. Sorry about that, my mouth is dry. So here's the call of United Way. We talk a lot about United Way as a convener, and we certainly have seen the convening work that Greensboro is doing currently, and the mere fact that all of you are on this Zoom and in the room shows the importance of convening. And so we have a shared future together. And so our shared future is about creating powerful community solutions, but we have to be aware of the challenges that our network is facing. So we've seen a significant decline in our workplace giving campaigns. And our workplace giving campaigns were a wonderful way for United Way to be able to partner with companies, to raise funds, and to distribute those funds to partner NGOs and nonprofits. But we now know that part of how we need to enhance what we do is to connect with corporations, foundations, and also high net worth individuals. And when I say high net worth individuals, I'm not talking about millionaires and billionaires. I'm talking about anyone who can just give $1. And I refer to a story in the Bible where it talks about the widow's mite, where she gave of her substance, and it wasn't a lot, but it was what she could afford. And so I don't want us to ever underestimate the power of connectivity with people in local communities. And it's not just the millionaires or the billionaires, but it's the person that wants to give of their substance, whether it's 50 cents, whether it's $1. We value all of that equally. And so we also have a generational challenge as a United Way, because we know people in my generation, I would say people in their maybe 40s, 50s and above are more familiar with United Way. But how do we get those that are currently in high school? How do we make the connectivity for those that are even younger than high school and junior high, and getting them to understand who United Way is and the importance of our organization in their communities, and inviting them to engage with us in the incredible work that we're doing. So there is a lot that we need to do in bringing everybody along multi-generationally. We also recognize that the issues that are happening in communities are also multi-generational. So you think about the economic pandemic that I just talked about, because that's what I'm calling it. The inflation and the tough choices that people are having to make really are a pandemic, because it's affecting rich and poor alike, but especially those on the lower socioeconomic scale. I think about we're still dealing with access to appropriate health, and the healthcare system, which is broken, and was the brokenness of it really came to light during COVID. We still have the ongoing war in Ukraine. And we have to understand, when you go back to Martin Luther King Jr.'s World House, need to understand that what is happening in Ukraine is affecting food systems. And so again, we're this world house that's connected. And then we have natural and man-made disasters. And we continue to see disaster after disaster happening in communities and just across the United States, whether it's hurricanes, whether it's tornadoes, whether it's wildfires, you name it. So there's a lot going on. And it seems like they continue to happen with more and more frequency. So what really are the answers? And how do we take on these challenges and these opportunities so that we are responsive to the needs of our communities? How do we make sure that we're relevant, impactful, and sustainable today and well into our next century of service? I think it's phenomenal that we've reached 100 years in Greensboro. And I think it would be phenomenal if we're making the right decisions today to ensure longevity for the next century of service. And so when I think about our big United Way worldwide table, and I think about the great big table in United Way Greensboro and our other local United Ways in their communities, we really show up as partners and not as saviors. So the people closest to the problems are the ones best positioned to engage in creating the solutions. And we think that's vitally important. We also see the need for ensuring that our rural communities are also resilient. So as that trusted advisor with the capacity to scale impact and share meaningfully these best practices that are happening locally throughout our network, and again, in the 95% of communities that we cover in the United States, we have this wonderful opportunity at this moment in time to make significant differences in communities and in the lives of individuals and families. So in order to do that, we will continue to do what's necessary to dig in, to look at the data, to understand impact, to be able to scale, to be able to create the metrics that support the goals that we set, and to show progress in meeting those goals. And so as we move forward in 2023, and as we go in continuing this critical work together, we want to do a couple of things. We want to accelerate our work on equity. We want to ensure voices are truly heard and new perspectives are valued. We are doubling down on our collection and analysis of data to drive local solutions. And we're looking at diversifying our revenue, moving to a more collaborative and comprehensive approach to building sustainable long-term revenue for our network and our communities. So let's remember that for over 100 years, United Way has been a leading voice in the community of caring. We see a need in our communities and we respond. My colleagues in the United Way system do not hesitate, but to step up and help those in need. I love the generosity. I love the kind and compassionate hearts that my colleagues have. I love the fact that whatever it takes, they want to be there. And so I'm just so inspired by the fact that you all have come together at this moment in time to celebrate 100 years, to begin to think big and to dream about what else is possible, to know that you still have work to do in your communities, that you are committed to do it, that you are renewing and refreshing your vision and your strategy for making the difference. And it's all about the common good. So I want to say congratulations. I want to say let's harness that urgency of now. Let's think about how we can move forward together strategically. How can we continue to be determined to make sure that no one is left behind and that everyone has the opportunity to thrive in a way that works for them. So I will stop because I know we're going to have a panel discussion, but I just want to say congratulations to you, your community. Congratulations for all that you're doing. I'm really proud of the staff in Greensboro and the surrounding communities, because you're going to be hearing from several CEOs in surrounding communities. And again, we can't do it alone. We have to do it standing shoulder to shoulder. We have to lock arms. We have to be in lockstep. And when we do that, There is no stopping us. So thank you for this time and the opportunity to be with all of you. And I just want to say happy holidays as well.
Wow, Angela, thank you so much for those powerful words. And so I am quite excited because I have the opportunity to be a part of this panel discussion. So again, thank you for your thought. And I'm looking forward to leading this conversation with our group of VIP leaders here today. And so I'm equally excited in the sense of just posing and hearing from our thought leaders on how we can be more strategic as well. So today we have our very own United Way of Greater Greensboro President and CEO, Khari Garvin. And we have United Way President and CEOs representing United Way of North Carolina, as President and CEO is Brittany Pruitt Fletcher. We have Jane Leibscher from Greater High Point. And standing in for Heidi Norwick from Alamance County, who is recovering from COVID, is Director of Community Change, Sally Gordon. And we have Antonia Monk-Richburg from Forsyth County. Our panelists will begin by asking Angela just a few questions, and then we will move forward to hear from our audience. Yes, so we'll start with you.
Sharon, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Angela, good morning. Thank you so much for being with us today. I'm going to kick us off with our first question, which really is a follow-up to something that you said in your remarks about the next 100 years. So it's been stated several times here that United Way of Greater Greensboro, we're in the midst of celebrating our centennial year. We hit 100 years in March of this year. So building on a comment that you made about the next 100 years, you talked about showing up as a partner and not as a savior. You also talked about making sure that those who are hardest hit by economic conditions, that they're at the table making decisions. And so building on that, and as we think about the next 100 years for the entire United Way network, talk to us please a little bit about what you see as the most relevant things that we need to think about for the next 100 years.
Thank you. I'm leaning forward because I sort of fading a little bit in and out. So I'm hoping I'm responsive to your question. So I'm not trying to dodge anything if I don't answer it dead on, but as I understand it, and looking at the next 100 years and what does it take and what do we need to be thinking about? And one of the things that I think is important for a network like ours, and for any organization, it could be a for-profit or nonprofit, is again, how do you make sure that you're being relevant? How do you go about serving your consumer, your customer, your client to know what their needs are so that you can evolve and create new programs, new ways of operations, new ways of delivering services that meet those needs. And I think for any organization, it's incumbent upon them to be very nimble and flexible. I think it's also very important to have an ear to the ground. Listening is important. Thinking about what's going on, not just today, or not even just, say, a year or 3 years from now. I believe that there are signals that we should be looking at that help us to position ourselves for 30 years from now. So for years, I've worked with an organization called the Institute for the Future, and they actually train people to look at signals. And you can find signals by watching TV, by reading the newspaper, by seeing what's going on. And there are signals that will tell you where the world is heading 30 years from now. And so rather than being a reactionary organization, why not be at the forefront? So even 20, 30 years ago, we were seeing migration patterns of population shifts from different states. And so a lot of companies began to build and open up offices where those migration patterns in the US. So people were moving from the heartlands. When you saw like Ford Motor Company, other companies shutting down and moving factories, then you saw migration patterns. And then as people began to move south because of the weather, again, those are things that were starting 30 years ago. So if you know people are coming, and you notice, for example, like companies like a Target or a Walmart, they'll build a CVS or Walmart or Target in what seemingly seems like an odd location, but they've already done the research to understand the population shifts. And so as we, as a nonprofit, begin to think like that and starting to see demographics, population shifts, what's happening, gentrification, et cetera, we can look at what's happening with the third grade reading level to then project what our community is going to look like. We can look at high school graduation rates to determine what our workforce is going to look like. So again, that's where we should begin to look at trends and begin to set up programs now and ways of acting and delivering that really enhance our community in the future. So I hope I answered your question. If not, I just gave you a whole other answer.
Thank you, Angela. Brittany Pruitt Fletcher with United Way of North Carolina. And my question is, with the workplace campaign landscape changing, how is United Way Worldwide supporting local United Ways in a new fundraising model?
So yes, the workplace giving campaign is changing. I think it's still a wonderful way of connecting, and the work. I think I've heard mixed reviews. So when I was on active duty in the Air Force, we had what's called the Combined Federal Campaign, and I always knew about United Way. I always back then looked for the book that listed all the nonprofits that we were giving money to, et cetera. The world has changed. Look at technology. All of us carry these devices, in our pocketbooks or in our pockets. And so we have apps that we now use. So people can actually give to causes, whether it's Facebook, online, GoFundMe, and they don't have to give at their employer. And what we're also seeing now is this trend of democratization, where people are saying, I don't want to be told where to give my money. I want to have a choice. So I don't want to necessarily give in a pass through, but what I want to see the whole list and make the decision for myself. So employer, sure, if you're going to take money out of my paycheck, that's fine, but let me decide how to split the funds and where they're going to go. So with that dynamic, I would say that it's incumbent upon United Way to continue to articulate who we are and the value proposition for who we are. And for those of you in the room and on the screen, I imagine the reason that you are here today is because you do see the value of United Way and you understand the broad scope and the depth of what we do. I will say that we are undergoing a brand refresh. We are just doing the quantitative and qualitative research now on what stakeholders are saying about our organization. But by this time next year, we'll have had the launch of a refreshed brand, and it will be one that we obviously want to resonate with various stakeholders and to tell our story, to say we are a great investment. We are that trusted advisor. We have a role to play as a partner and convener in communities. And so with that, we will be able to diversify revenue and also continue to strengthen the organization.
Thank you.
Good morning, Angela. Jane Leibscher, President and CEO of United Way of Greater High Point. It's wonderful to see you, albeit virtually. And you touched on this question earlier in your remarks as well. But what do you see as the greatest challenge facing both the United Way worldwide, but also the local United Way network?
I think it goes back to similar to what I just said about the brand and brand recognition. So we have this trusted, valued brand, but it's not a multi-generational brand. And so I will tell you this story, like I still buy Tide detergent. And you want to know why I buy Tide detergent? It's because it's what my mom used. And so as a kid, I still, you know, as an adult, am buying some of the things that I grew up with in my household. So we have the opportunity and have I think the pressing need to be multi-generational, to show and connect with the younger folks. Why not in schools where a lot of junior high schools require community service? Why isn't United Way connecting with the school systems to say, we can help you with day of volunteerism and volunteering? And how do we more clearly, again, sort of articulate why you would want to be a part of this wonderful organization and the various ways in which your participation in United Way affects you and your community. So that's the message that we need to continue to refine, and I'm really excited about that. And so that's not only the United Way worldwide, but that's also obviously the local United Ways where the work is happening on the ground.
Hi, Angela. I'm Sally Gordon, Director of Community Change with United Way of Alamance County. Nice to see you. In a perfect world with all of the resources needed, what is the one thing you would like to see happen for the network?
The one thing I'd like to see is if I could get have a mechanism that is able to measure, not just anecdotally, but with specifics, the impact that we have on people's lives. So like the video we saw was wonderful. And then we could measure that impact and say, but for United Way and United Way's partners, our community would not have whatever the X is, or whatever the goal is, or whatever the community decides. And I know Greensboro is focused on solving poverty, but wouldn't it be nice to say all the key stakeholders in our community came together. We want to create pathways and systems for economic mobility. And because we came together, because of the work we did, we have minimized the effects of poverty in our community. And this is how we did it.
Thank you, Angela. Hi, Angela. I'm Antonia Monk-Richburg, the President and CEO of United Way of Forsyth County. We're certainly pleasure to meet you today. I have a question. How does United Way Worldwide envision continued relationship with the tiered level of geographic levels in terms of international, statewide, and local? How do you think you're doing that going forward?
I think I got the question. Could you just say it one more time just to hear?
Okay, how does United Way Worldwide envision continued relationships working with tiered levels or geographic-based United Ways, international, statewide, and local?
Thank you. So what I think is so wonderful about the network is that, again, as I said a couple of times, we are in 95% of US communities. What I think is important is that there are bright spots in local communities. In other words, there are examples, shining stars of incredible impact and work and partnership that's happening. And why is it that it would be only in that one community? Why can't we in neighboring communities share and come together and work together. We know that, people may work in one county where there's a local United Way, but live in another county where there's a local United Way. And if we are really going to move the needle, it has to be a partnership with each other. And so it starts locally, but it scales up to state, region, and then even larger with the US and then beyond. And so my hope is that, one, we can continue to identify those bright spots. Two, that we can create a system to be able to share those bright spots within our network and outside of our network, and take the great things that are happening locally and take them to scale. And then I go back to what I said about data insights and then be able to tell the story, but to say, but for United Way coming together and working with other partners, working with each other, that we are really that incredible force for good. Mm-hmm.
So thank you for those great questions from our panelists. And at this time, I have a question that I'd like to ask for each one of our panelists here today. And then we'll open it up for the audience to ask questions. And just know that we will be monitoring the chat as well. And so let me grab this mic. This is good. So the question that I have, and sorry, the other thing I'm mindful of coming on my apologies. There is feedback coming from the speaker, so I want to receive some feedback from you. We have not been able to figure that out, so thank you for that you not figure that part out. So I have one question for the panelists, and I will share the mic with each one of you, and then we will go to the audience for questions. So what's the most pressing challenge faced by your individual United Ways?
Thanks for the talk. Well, for us, I would say, as we have find now a single mission to end local poverty, I think the challenge is the ability to quantify that. Both by definition as well as time that's fundraising, right? I mean, so ending local poverty, that idea is a little bit nebulous, right? It's not making widgets, so there's no unit costs associated with it. Everyone's situation and circumstance is a little different. So it's the ability to really effectively define it in the mind of the public, and then to be able to build a fundraising campaign that is so broad and so flexible, so that everyone who contributes to that idea understands that there is no fixed cost associated with it, right? So that's been the challenge. I think we're making some headway. That's been a challenge.
Thank you. So I'm at the state organization, so I think there are challenges that we face, but we are a member service organization, so the challenges that we face are reflective of all the United Ways in North Carolina. And I think probably the biggest challenge that we're facing right now is Angela referred to it as the economic pandemic. And so many of our United Ways are seeing folks come in for services that have never needed services before. And so there's this great need that's kind of shifted out of the pandemic for even more resources to be provided to citizens in our community that may have never received services before. And so hoping to navigate them through the services that our community provides, and then also being creative and collaborative around the resources that we can all come together to meet the needs of them. Thank you, Brittany. So I can definitely echo what Brittany and Khari said. Again, I'm Jane Leibscher, President CEO for United Way Greater High Point. We too are seeing an influx calls from people needing assistance who never, ever thought they would be in situations of need. And at the same time, we're seeing a decrease in some of our campaigns. And Angela also touched on a point that is a real challenge for us locally is the evergreen platform that we see many of our major organizations now going to for employee giving. United Ways used to have the monopoly on the charitable stage. We were the one game in town. We came in, we told our story, and everyone got behind the mission. Well, now organizations are able to keep the employees happy, and I certainly understand that. They are offering the opportunity for these employees to give to any 501c3 at any point during the year, which sounds great. But what it does is it actually waters down what your local United Way can do in the community. Some of our biggest campaigns, traditional biggest campaigns, are no longer campaigns at all. They emphasize volunteerism, which obviously is critical. But bottom line, we need dollars to make significant change in our community. So that, I would say, is our biggest challenge right now.
Hi, y'all. I'm Sally Gordon. I'm in the Community Impact Division, so I can definitely speak to those needs. But much like Khari said, we're still continuing to narrow our focus and see where we can have the greatest impact. We have a couple of those agencies that we just historically funded and are historically United Way partners, but just trying to be more intentional with our funding and where we can have the greatest impact. Looking into poverty being our focus, basic needs. We see all our agencies are at this new level of service and experiences influx of folks needing assistance, and that's just kind of normal now. So looking at what our focus is, where we can have the greatest impact, and what our specific focus truly is in Alamance County.
Good afternoon. I'm Antonia Monk-Richburg, the president of United Way Forsyth County, and of course, 8 weeks in after working in this wonderful community for over 30 years. So excited to be here this morning, this afternoon again. I would say that the most pressing challenge for us sort of mirrors what my colleagues have already said, but as I was talking to the staff about this yesterday, we talked about the fact that our greatest challenge is trying to figure out how do we diversify our revenue streams, given the fact that the workplace campaign is changing and evolving over time. And so we're looking at how can we bring dollars in more ways so that we can continue to support the community, and so we can continue to do the great work in that way has always done. And the other thing that we're seeing is that challenge of trying to make sure that we have that top of mind awareness in the community in terms of being that honest convener, that catalyst for change, and that true collaborator of services. And so we're working really hard to do that and something. Thank you.
Thanks to each one of you, Angela, Tonya, Sally, Jane, Brittany, and Khari, as our panelists today. We want to just take a moment and open it up to our audience. So if you have questions, we're also monitoring our virtual chat. And if you want to direct your questions to any particular panelists, please let us know. But I would like to start hearing from you, and we do have, we'll make sure you got the mic if you need that. But just ask your questions, how can we all discover the way to support our community with change? Don't be shy. Yes, I'll get you next. And then we get it.
Hey, Ryan Blackridge, work from health. It seems a common theme that there's this challenge of sort of aging out of the knowledge of United Way and early disruptors that are really going to younger age group. I was just curious, from a wider perspective, from our guests today, as well as from the rest of you, what are some of the different approaches that you've taken recently, and how can those of us in this room support you in those different approaches?
Well, 8 weeks in, I'll try to answer that question. I'll start out with trying to answer that question. I think for United Way of Forsyth County, we just started to think through, how can we be more strategic in the work that we're doing? When we think back to the original United Way, when it first started as a community fest, we were the only game in town. We were the biggest nonprofit, and we were supporting all of the smaller nonprofits. And so we didn't have to be strategic. We didn't have to really think through anything. All we had to do was come to your workplace and ask you for money. You would give the money, and then we would spread it out as far as we could, right? And do the very best that we could. Now we have to be more strategic in making things through. How can we have community-wide impact, and what needs to be done to ensure that that happens? And so that's a much more difficult thing to do. And at the same time, it's sometimes a harder sale because people want to know why you aren't funding those organizations that you historically funded. But in order to be more focused on one area, one specific topic area, then we can't do that. So that's one of the things that we've done is, I think it's different.
So many of our United Ways across North Carolina are developing lots of different funding affinity groups, if you will. So United Way of Greater Greensboro has done a tremendous job with their African American leadership. There are lots of organizations that are doing Women United events or emerging leader events or affinity groups where we're trying to talk to younger generations or specific target populations and involve them in the work that United Way is doing. There's also several United Ways that are taking a new approach to workplace campaigns. So instead of going to a business and saying, hey, we want to come in, we want all your employees together, we want to tell them about the great work that United Way is doing in the community, we're going to the table and we're saying, hey, we know that you have some corporate social responsibility values that are really important to the folks that work here and to your leadership. What are the things that United Way is doing? How do those things align? And what does a new type of partnership look like? It may not look like a workplace campaign, and that's okay. It may look more like volunteering, as Jane said. It may look more in terms of like corporate dollars, or it may be coming in and allowing folks to understand that through the United Way model, we do allow for you to designate your gifts to a particular nonprofit or to a particular issue that's happening in the community, whether it's education, or improving their grade reading, or moving people to a point of self-sufficiency. So you're no longer having to use the services that our United Ways are offering. So I think there are a lot of diverse approaches that we're testing in some ways because it is new for many of the United Ways. But there are a variety of ways, small business circles that are being established to really target small businesses. So I think in your local community, there's lots of ways that your local United Way is really trying to target specific populations.
One of the ways our United Way has strategically sought a different population is we created a new initiative that launched in January of this year titled Smart Money. And it is a series of financial literacy classes that originally was designed to target individuals who struggle with financial education. Research proves that people who do not have a strong financial education background, they are often at the most risk of having issues in life. And so we started this and went really well. We realized we wanted to take it further. We wanted to take it to an opportunity for let's get to people before they find themselves in a critical need. So let's go to children. And so we have launched Smart Money Kids. And as we've had several events now, it's going great. We've had several corporate partners, especially our banking individuals, are really excited to get behind this movement because financial literacy is such an important component of healthy living. And we are taking it to a different demographic. Yeah, we are approaching our seniors. And so our senior citizens are oftentimes some of our most vulnerable population, specifically for stands. And so we will be going into two of our senior adult serving agencies that the United Way Greater High Point funds. And so we are looking at that. We're excited about this initiative because we are having the opportunity to have a conversation with high school students, middle school students. These children are going to grow up, hopefully with a stronger financial background. They'll be in jobs at some point, and hopefully they will remember United Way Greater High Point will remember that program that I went through. And so that's one of the ways our organization is trying to reach a different audience.
So thank you so much, Jane, for your response. And so at this time, we're going to get ready to transition to Khari. I just want to thank everybody today for being a part of this and this learning conversation, and I hope that we will continue to have that conversation. I know that Khari is going to close us out.